Greetings, it is I, Tempest Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue my discussion where I review anime series and then give you some information how you can adapt them to your Big Eyes Small Mouth game, your BESM role-playing game systems. Now, big note here, of course you can adapt it to any role-playing game systems if you're ready to set up the rules the way you think they work. So let's dive into, of course, two more from the 2014s and two more from the previous season, which just finished coming out. But let's dive into the two from 2014s with, of course, Soul Eater Not and Ryuugajou Nanana no Maizoukin, which is what we're going to start with, or Nanana's Buried Treasure. Now, Nanana Island is a man-made island in the Pacific, and it was originally founded by a group that sought to have education to all, to those of the young and old, to basically spread knowledge. It, of course, was founded by the Great Seven, led by this character, Nanana. Now we enter a high school student, Jugo. Jugo has been exiled from his family for various personal reasons, and finds himself coming to the island. He finds his way to gaining an apartment, and of course, when he gets there, he finds it haunted, but haunted by the ghost of Nanana. 10 years earlier, she had been murdered, assassinated. And over the course of bonding with her, he decides to help her out to figure out how she was murdered, what happened, things that she cannot remember. And so then the two of them go questing for Nanana's hidden treasures, hidden items of almost supernatural power that have been scattered across the island behind tricks and traps in defensive places which are nearly impossible to find, where as he goes after them, he hopes to not only find out how she died, but who killed her, because she suspects it's someone that was after her very treasure. And of course, along the way, he allies with a number of folks that can be sort of friendly rivals when it comes to gathering treasures and getting the information out. So for the genres, this one, of course, supernatural. The treasure items are supernatural items. They give powers to those that use them. It's also a comedy. Lots of funny things happen. The relationships between Nanana and Jugo and the other characters that are there, the main characters, oftentimes results in very comical situations. It's also an adventure. They are traveling around to various places on the island, businesses, buildings, schools, places that they can run into and explore secret areas, hidden places where these treasures are. Very adventurous. Now I rate this one a 4. This is one I did like very much so. It had an interesting premise and really fun little thing that happened here. Now, if you are using it in a BESM game, I'll recommend 200 points. You're going to make your characters those that are seeking the treasures of Nanana. They're going after it probably for their own reasons, whether or not it's the goal of finding the treasures, the glory of it. Maybe there's some kind of treasure that can help them out, for whatever reasons. Now, it will be completely up to you whether you bring in the ghost of Nanana and the entire murder operation that's related to this, or just focus on the treasures, the puzzles, traps, and tricks in order to gain them. You can bring in that plot that's in between, or keep it just to the gathering the treasure, going through whatever's being overcome to get that treasure. It is up to you as a game master how in-depth you want to do this. If you just want to have the simple adventures, or you want to bring on this overall larger plot, which is also going to be in effect. Both work fine, but the characters themselves should also be the friendly rivals type. Each one of them will want the treasures or certain treasures for various reasons, and will, to a degree, compete with each other, but also work together when it is necessary and when it makes sense. They are friendly rivals, just like that. So let's move on, though, and talk about Soul Eater Not. Now, this is a spin-off of the main Soul Eater franchise, and I will tell you that on a future episode, I more than likely will be reviewing. And it's one that would be treated and I have to tell you, it's one that is treated separately from the original series. So that is why I'm mentioning it in particular. So, similar to the original series, we focus on students of the DWMA, the Death Weapon Meister Academy. This is a world where there are a number of people born with the ability to change into weapons. And they go to this school to learn how to control their abilities, along with those that would learn to use these weapons, the Meisters. Weapons and Meisters going to school together. Now, in this world, there are two classes. The Eat class, which are basically learning to bond together and to go out and fight enemies, complete justice, protect the world to a degree with their abilities. And the Not class. The not class is for those that just want to learn to control their abilities so that they don't harm themselves and others by accident. They don't realize that they have these powers originally. When they awaken, well, they got to do something to control them, or what are they going to do with them? Hence why they're in that part of the class. We focus on Tsugumi, who is a Japanese girl that is a weapon that turns into a halberd, and that she's going to the not class, of course. She's attempting to learn to control her abilities so she doesn't have to worry about it. It's sort of thrown her life into chaos that she learned that she is a weapon. Now, she does sort of bond with two girls, and ends up that each of these kind of competing to be her Meister, the controller of her, as they learn together to use their various abilities. All of them in the not class, that she's kind of got that can't quite decide which one she wants to go into. And so we focus on their daily lives and dealing with some threats outside the academy, some things that are going on within the academy, dangers that are there because the weapons and the Meisters do have enemies that they face against, especially from the Eat class. We do see characters from the original anime. And this does, in fact, take place about a year before the anime itself takes place. So this is, to a degree, a prequel, because we see these characters before we see them in the main series. We see them beforehand, I would say. So if you're talking about genres, first off, comedy. That's a big thing about it. Lots of funny, silly things happen when they're getting along in their relationship. There's tensions, difficulties because of it, because it's a situation that's normally two people bonded together and you've got three in the mix. It just adds into very strange and funny things. Of course, then it's a slice of life. We focus them on going to school, learning things, some of their daily lives within the city that's around the academy. And for that reason, it is a very good slice of life. And it's supernatural, though, too, because Tsugumi turns into a weapon, and there's powers that can be used when combining a Meister and a weapon together. They unlock very powerful abilities. There's also witches in this world who use spellcraft and oftentimes are very dangerous, so you can see here that it is indeed supernatural. Now I rate this one a 4. I in fact rate it slightly less than I would the normal Soul Eater, which I will argue that I'll enjoy the manga 100 times more than I enjoy the anime, but that's an entirely different argument based upon that. But still, the manga and the anime of this one is also out. Soul Eater or not is still a very good series. It's just that some of the flaws that I could find in it are small there. They're hard to go over all of them exactly. You know, that's one of those strange things. It's like you watch through something and you're like, something's off here, but you can't quite place it. And there was a little bit, I think it's that it's trying to be in the same world as a world that is very different genres. So you often get hints of those genres when you think it actually wants to focus on the genres I talked about. It wants to focus on being slice of life, comedy, when those kind of more action-y connotations of the normal series are always hinted in there, maybe almost a little too much at times. Now, if you're using this in a BESM game, I would recommend 300 points. You're going to, of course, make your characters members of the Not class. Whether they're Meisters or weapons, completely up to them, but you should try to get your characters to, well, pair up. Now, this doesn't mean you couldn't have a 3-character combination, let's say, like within the anime. You could do that, or you could have just someone that's paired with an NPC. You could also do that, but generally speaking, I would say focus on having just duos of people that will be Meister and weapon, and then developing their abilities. Anything else is for drama or flavor that you want to develop in amongst the stories. And you're going to have your characters, of course, going to the academy, learning to use their abilities, dealing with each other, dealing with their other students, bonding with all of each other, becoming friends, dealing with their normal lives to a degree also, their lives in the city, possibly dealing with external or internal threats. There are always threats to the academy itself. Various witch-based organizations, which, just like them, might cause problems. Problems within the school itself, in rivalries. There are always problems, as seen more or less in the original Soul Eater series and a little bit here. Things like infiltrators and people that probably aren't up to the best standards of students that you could have problems with. All of these things can combine to various different stories that you could very easily tell here. And you can keep it as simple and complex based upon how much of the original Soul Eater you want to bring in and how much you want to just ignore it completely and just go for an interesting setting. That's basically an interesting school and life setting. But let's move on and talk about the two from summer of this year. We have Action Heroine Cheer Fruits and Battle Girl High School. But let's talk about Battle Girl High School. So this is set in the year 2045. Humanity and Earth has been devastated by the arrival of a strange type of being, the Orosu. They have put humanity to the edge, driven them back, caused much destruction, damage, and death. But a number of girls have risen up to fight against them, to defeat them, to battle against them, to protect humanity, what's left of it, and keep it strong from being overrun. And that is where our series focuses on a special academy for these girls, the Hoshimori, who are destined to fight against the Orosu and protect what's left of humanity. We focus on their trials and tribulations, that they bond together while battling against these things, learn more of their abilities, deepen their own abilities in a way, compete with each other to get stronger, while dealing with various threats that exist beyond just the normal Orosu, beyond what they see in front of them, protecting what's left of humanity here in this small area and keeping it strong. So it's an action. They get into battle with strange and unusual monsters. They fight with their various weapons. It's also very much so a sci-fi. It's like creatures that seem almost ultra-dimensional and coming in this kind of futuristic feeling. And even their strange and special equipment that they're using seems less supernatural and more sci-fi in a way. Then it's also school. It's focusing on them as at this academy, at this high school, for teaching them, for making sure that they're good to go and ready to battle against these things, while still to a degree having a normal life. Now, I do only rate this one a 3. I did want to mention it because there are some interesting things about it that made it stand out a little bit. This is an interesting one because it's a little different from most situations. Most of the time when you get this kind of situation, you have a small team. This is an entire academy of folks in a more sci-fi fighting monster setting, rather than a more magical/magical girl setting, which oftentimes does repeat some of this. Now, again, I rate it as a 3 because some of the other aspects of it did turn me off to it a little degree. The characters not as well developed from what I've, encountered of them. There are some other problems which detracted me from diving too deep into it. But the fact is, it was relatively interesting. There was some interesting storylines going on. And it's not the worst thing that you could watch. So if you do like this type of anime, I could definitely recommend checking it out. It might be for you, it might not be. But I do feel like it would be very interesting for a BESM game, hence why I mentioned it. But let's talk about that then. So you're going to give your characters 400 points if you're using a BESM. You're going to be a group of Hoshimori. You're going to be going to the academy. You're going to split your time between an almost normal life and going and having to battle monsters, battle creatures that are threatening humanity, protect what's left of humanity. And they must overcome their own personal problems, their own personal demons, which may keep them from getting stronger. Their teamwork they'll have to develop, maybe do little competitions with each other, things like that, training sessions, deal with perhaps, newer students, transfer students, things like that can cause ruptures between it. And your players will almost be more of the core aspect of characters, because always in the series, with an extended cast, you always find there's usually more of a core of a, couple of characters, 3 to 4, and this will be the core of it. Your characters will be the core of this entire group. It'll be all about them protecting humanity, dealing with strange creatures which can appear in many different forms, and, continuing to live. Live protecting humanity. Now, let's move on and talk about Action Heroine Cheer Fruit. So we're set in a world that's pretty much the Japan we know today, but because of certain actions of a local heroine fighter, basically one that would put on a very show of enemies versus good guys to show off to children, that a certain heroine from one of those shows has become vastly popular. And because of this, the popularity of these heroine shows has increased. These, women heroes who are doing their best as a sort of new version of idols, except, battling out against various monsters and stuff, that many different districts and places have gained these. We focus on this one particular area, Hinano City, which is dwindling funds, dwindling popularity. They don't really have a show that's going on that's impressing people. They have problems with this. We focus on a high schooler, Misaki, who is related to the governor of this city, and upon seeing a show with a couple of other girls, decides that she wants to revitalize the town. She wants to put on bigger and better shows. So she starts up a project, the Action Heroine Project, in which she recruits a bunch, including these girls, to put on bigger and better shows to revitalize the town, revitalize, of course, the community, and revitalize everything around her with big action set pieces and fun little things that's going on. But doing it in a way that she can do. So this is a slice of life if we're talking about the genres. We focus on Misaki in her everyday life, from participating in the project to school and everything in between. It's a comedy, of course. It's a lot of funny moments because they're getting into something that seems a little ridiculous, that this style of shows, like live-action Power Rangers is a great way of describing it, that becomes vastly popular. A little silly, that one. But it's also very much so school, because we do focus on Misaki's life in school and the friends that she has there that are the ones that help her with the show. That it's, though it is slice of life, there is this better focus on here. Now again, I rate this one a 3, similar to the last one, because there's some good comedy here, there's some interesting aspects of it, but it's probably not the best series you could watch. I just think it would also be interesting to try out in a BESM game. Hence, we're going to talk about it now. So if you're boozing in a BESM game, I'm recommending 150 points. Effectively, your players will be members, if not the controllers, of the Action Heroine Project, or something similar to whatever region, whatever town that they are in. They are attempting to put on heroine shows to impress crowds, to bring in popularity, to bring in people, tourists, people from across the nation, maybe even farther than that, to revitalize their ailing community, to get more money back into it, to make it more popular, to do things to improve their town while putting on shows that they have to plan, design, put together. And the fact is, they might not have the highest budget to do it. You might have to be smart about how you're putting together costumes and props and the way it's presented. A great script, great performances, plus still having to manage their daily lives in schools. So you can see the interesting juxtaposition here of having characters manage some daily life aspects, your slice of life, your school aspects, while designing, putting on, practicing, mastering interesting shows, which your players will be designing themselves, putting together various ideas that should helpfully impress the crowd. And, depending on their execution, we'll have them impress the crowd, we'll have them bring in the crowds, kids that will love them, adults that will love them, people that will come in to see their shows and bring about the town. And planning these shows out, executing them properly, is going to be a big part of this entire thing. And I think that's why it's such an interesting one. Because we're having this interesting juxtaposition between the average slice of life, which are fun to sometimes play in, and this entire crazy project that your characters will effectively be put in charge of. But that's it for today. So, I introduced you to 4 more anime series, giving you some information on how you can use them in your Big Eye Small Mouth games. Now, as I said at the beginning of the show, you could, of course, adapt these to any role-playing game system you want to. If you have a role-playing game system that you want to put these into, you just have to figure out the basic rules of how they adapt them, and character creation. Some of these are very easy to do this with. Action Heroine Cheer Fruit is probably one that's really easy to adapt to your basic human characters, too. You don't have to do a lot for this one to adapt it to so many different systems I can think of off the top of my head. You really don't. And that's one of those things. Other ones, more difficulty. Might need some more rules adaptation. You have to look at whatever your favorite system is, you can put it in there. The basic suggestions, the basic structure I'm talking about here, stays the same. So, I hope you're having a great day, though, and until the next time, I bid you farewell.